From modern day to all throughout history, humanity has done some of the most astonishing and incredible things that makes the world wonder in awe at how far our species has come, while at other times we've made some pretty big blunders. Whether it's sports, business, or war, and whether they were made thousands of years ago or just a decade or so, today we're counting down the top 10 worst decisions ever made. Number 10, Motorola and smartphones. If there's one lesson that you can take away from the Motorola company, it's never rest on your laurels. Back in 2006, Motorola dominated the cell phone market with their sleek and stylish Razr cell phones. From parents to their kids in school, it felt like everyone had one of these things, and Motorola was happy with their 22% market share. However, the company refused to innovate or push themselves forward as smartphones began making their way into consumers' hands. While they were busy trying to make a smartphone look and feel as cool as the previous line of Razr phones, the iPhone and BlackBerry would already be on store shelves, punishing the company for taking their success for granted. Number 9, the Versailles Treaty. A bit of an odd entry into the list, but probably one of the greatest mistakes the world has ever made was World War II, and the first thing to kick it all off was the way World War I ended, the Treaty of Versailles. The treaty itself didn't address any of the issues that started World War I and left a terrible taste in the mouth of Germany, which would do a great job in feeding animosity over the next 2 decades. One French military strategist, Ferdinand Foch, prophetically stated after the treaty was signed, "This is not peace, it's an armistice for 20 years. World War II started 20 years and 65 days later. Number 8, Dick Rowe and the Beatles. A classic story. Back in 1962, the Beatles were looking to sign with Decca Records. Executive Dick Rowe turned them down, saying that guitar groups are falling out of favor. But, of course, he couldn't be further from the truth, as the Beatles went on to be the best-selling band of all time. Number 7, Ross Perot versus Bill Gates. Similarly, over in America, the same year of the Beatles incident, 1962, a man named Ross Perot would found an immaculately successful tech company called Electronic Data Systems. But as successful as he was in his time, as the 70s approached, Perot would make one of the worst business decisions he'd ever make. A tall, nerdy Bill Gates would be invited into Perot's office one day to discuss a deal on the sale of Microsoft to Electronic Data Systems. Gates would insist his company was worth $40 million, where Perot thought that was outrageous. They couldn't come to an understanding, and Bill Gates would leave with his company. Today, Microsoft, of course, is worth around $380 billion. Number 6, Watergate. In the early 1970s, there was a break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate office complex in Washington, D.C. This would set off a gigantic conspiracy that would be discovered and investigated by the U.S. Congress as they learned of the Nixon administration's involvement and the illegal activities that took place, ultimately leading to the resignation of the President of the United States. This might be one of the largest scandals in the history of American politics, but the worst part about it, from Richard Nixon's standpoint at least, was none of it was necessary. Nixon had his re-election against George McGovern pretty much in the bag. Number 5, Prohibition. In 1920, despite a veto from President at the time Woodrow Wilson, the U.S. Congress banned alcohol. Prohibition went into effect as the sale, production, importation, and transportation of all alcoholic beverages was now illegal, although it wasn't actually illegal to consume alcohol itself. Over the next decade, the negative impact it had on the agriculture industry, the negative impact it had on the U.S. economy, the weak enforcement laws that made it not all that difficult to still find yourself a drink, and the fact that the entire country was pissed off they could no longer drink beer, all of which would lead to Prohibition being repealed in 1933. Number 4, Chris Webber's timeout. Although this was more of a mental blunder than anything, it was still one of the worst mistakes in sports history. In the 1993 NCAA title game, the Michigan Wolverines were down by just 2 points to the North Carolina Tar Heels and had possession of the ball with 12 seconds left in the match. They were set up to take at least one last shot to either tie the game with a 2 or win with a 3, but instead of trying to set up a play or take a shot himself, Chris Webber had a mental lapse in judgment and tried to call a timeout, even though Michigan had already used all their timeouts. This gave North Carolina the ball, some free throws, and eventually the championship. Number 3, the Trojan Horse. The greatest mistake in the legends of the past would probably have to be the tale of the Trojan Horse. During the Trojan War, which was fought between the Greeks and the city of Troy, the Greek army had reached an impasse. They had been failing to infiltrate or siege out Troy for 10 years. After spending some time coming up with alternative plans, the Greeks would develop a scheme where they would build a giant wooden horse, and some would hide inside as the rest of the army pretended to sail away, signaling defeat. After doing so, the Trojan army took the horse into the city as a victory trophy, and the Greek force snuck out at night and opened the gates, finally letting their allies in. Although the details and truthfulness of the story have been debated over the years, it still remains one of the greatest military mistakes of all time. Number 2, Yahoo and Mark Cuban. The billionaire and owner of the Dallas Mavericks, Mark Cuban, made his fortune with a company called Broadcast.com. The idea was to broadcast radio of sports events across the internet, taking advantage of the new technology at the time. It was a massive success at first, and Yahoo would buy out the company for $5.7 billion in 1999, where Broadcast would tank just the next year. Broadcast died a very quick death, along with Yahoo's hopes of making any money with the transaction. Currently, going to Broadcast.com in your web browser will only redirect you to Yahoo's homepage. And the number one mistake of all time is attributed to none other than Ronald Wayne. Ronald Wayne is a retired American electronics industry worker who co-founded Apple Computers, now Apple Incorporated, with Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. The reason you probably haven't heard his name before, at least not on the same level in popularity of the other two founders, is because he sold his 10% stake in the company for $800, later accepting $1,500 to forfeit any claims against Apple. But of course, nowadays, Apple is the most valuable company on the planet, worth $750 billion, meaning Ronald Wayne's stake would now be worth $75 billion today if he had held on to it. That's all for today's Top 10. Make sure to subscribe for more videos and leave a comment if there's a mistake you think I left out. I'll see you all in the next video, but until then, have a wonderful day.